Welcome back, everybody. We are about to have an amazing conversation with Jenni Rock, who is actually coming to us from Great Britain. She is a co parenting and conflict resolution expert. And I'm just going to start by saying, Jenni, welcome and thank you so much for being here.
Oh no, thank you for letting me come today. Really appreciate it.
So, if this is the first conversation that you're tuning into as part of Empowerthon, welcome. Empowerthon is the inaugural fundraiser for the Parent Tween Foundation. And the Parent Tween Foundation is the charitable division of Parent Tween Connection. If you've never heard of us, welcome. I'm Clarissa Constantine. I'm the founder of the Parent Tween Connection. And we are where you go when you don't know where to go to help yourself as a parent or to help your kiddos. We connect families to each other as well as to professionals who can support them through life with teens and tweens. And the Parent Tween Foundation's mission is to help bridge the financial gap that often exists between families and the help that they need. So, today with Jenni, we're talking about how to navigate life when your ex partner is making it a living hell. And after getting a chance to know Jenni a little bit, I understand better why she chose that term because yeah, she not only has she been there, done that, and got the T-shirt, but as she put it, "Go big or go home." Because let me tell you, the hell was pretty spectacular, and not in a good way. So, Jenni, if why don't we start with just a brief overview of like what have you experienced, so that as our partners, our parents here are listening, they're like, "Yep, she gets the living hell."
Oh, absolutely. And I always tend to say that I'm pretty unshockable in terms of what people kind of go through because I've been there and I've done it. I've lived it because when when I married, I'd been with my partner for 3 years already, and I already knew that it was an abusive relationship, but I was so sucked into the Kool-Aid and I was just, just under their spell that I just carried on going. And then when we had our son, that was kind of when my focus shifted away from maybe me to him.
Hmm.
Because like any new parent, it's like, your child is you know, that's your precious thing in the world. That's the
Hmm.
thing that you'll kill for your children. And I was holding my son's hand one day, and my husband at the time was having an argument with me and shouting and screaming at me, and he just pulled back his arm and smacked me so hard in the face that I felt my brain shake. I honestly felt my brain shake. And I was holding my 3-year-old son's hand. He was stood right next to me in the kitchen while all this was happening. And that was my moment. That was my snap. Because you have to get to rock bottom before you're ready to walk
To
away.
go. Sure.
And yeah, that was my moment. Because you can do it, you can do whatever you like to me. Yeah, I'm a grown up. I'm tough. I can take it. But my son will not grow up thinking that's the way to treat his family, to treat his
Hmm.
wife, to treat his children. I'm
Hmm.
not. I'm not going to let that happen. And so then Q phoning the police. He hung up on the. Well, basically, he ripped the phone out of my hand and smacked it down. So then the police turned up. He then took our son hostage in the back garden with a chainsaw, a pickaxe handle, and a German Shepherd dog, an 8 stone German Shepherd dog, as his weapons of choice. And he basically used our 3-year-old as a human shield to stop being arrested, to not be arrested. So he closed, yeah, the road was closed. The dog patrol was on standby. The police dog handler was there, ready to come in and take our dog out with his dog. Um, there was armed police on standby, ready to kind of come in and take him out if needs be. But my focus was my son.
Right.
That's my
Absolutely.
son. Um, and that was the day that everything kind of fell apart. Let me,
Hmm.
it hadn't been roses, it hadn't been all sweetness, light, and roses up to that point because I'd managed to mask an awful lot of it for everybody else. What happens behind closed doors, people don't know about. But,
Hmm.
and you just plaster a smile on your face. And I was working a really good career. I'd been working in banking for a long time, and I was a branch manager. And I went to work the next day as if nothing had happened, because that was my way of coping. Because if I didn't think about it, I didn't have to acknowledge it to deal with it. Because I was so scared that if I started crying, I wouldn't stop.
Right.
Because that's how traumatic it was at the time. I mean, I'm fine about it now, talking about it now, because I know that so many women out there feel that nobody will understand them, nobody will believe them, that, their ex presents this wonderful, kind of charming personality to the outside, and then they see a very different side. And
Right.
yeah, and so I'd already gone through an awful lot of stuff, but that was my defining moment. And what saddens me most is when I ask my son about his memories as a child, because he's very good about remembering, stuff that happened years ago. And, he's not a child anymore. He's a man, and his outstanding memory is him being sat on the sofa in the lounge, and he could hear Mummy and Daddy arguing in the kitchen. And I recall to this day exactly what that argument was, because my ex was basically spouting off about something. He would always turn up at the house when we were out, and then when I picked up our son from nursery and brought him home, the house would be in darkness, and I wouldn't know what I'd be walking into. I always felt sick just opening that door, because I didn't know if he was going to be in the house or not, because he had that whole crazed serial killer kind of thing going on. So that day he was there, and I tried to kind of get him away from my son into the kitchen, and he had me pinned up against the wall by the throat, saying, I'm just going to kill you, but with a few more expletives in there. And I just snapped. I just said, well, if you're going to do it, just do it. I'm done. I can't take any more. If this is the way my life is going to be for the rest of my life, I don't want it.
Wow.
So it wasn't that I wanted to kill myself. It was just I couldn't take any more.
Right.
And we'd already been separated for months at this point.
Right.
We're not talking days. We're talking like months of intimidation, harassment, manipulation,
Sure.
threats, harassment. He'd threatened to phone my work. He threatened if I didn't pick up my phone, when he was phoning multiple times throughout the day, sort of 20, 30, 40 times a day. If I didn't pick up the phone, he was going to turn up.
Right.
I was holding a responsible career. I didn't want my work space tainted with as I saw it, my failures as a wife.
Well, but also just the aspect of, like, if you're divorcing, you needed to have your career for
I needed
income.
it to pay the bills. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So this whole live is not intended just for the backstory, but I wanted to have that backstory so that as you listen to this, Jenni, she said to me privately, she took her time to grieve. She took her time to heal and to work. And as I said to her, like a phoenix rises from the ashes, so to speak, that like she's in a place now that after having been through all of that, she's helping other families who are navigating the after effects. And to be clear, she's not the person that can support you when you're in the space of like waiting for that rock bottom to hit or how to actually navigate the exit from the situation. It's you've exited and you're in a place now of having to co-parent with this ex-spouse who is just really not cooperative. It would be like humans, like the super light way of putting it, right? And so, one of the things, Jenni, that you wanted to talk about was understanding the impact on kids. And I think that's probably a place to start relative to the fact that the last point that you offered us about your kiddo's memory, that the only memory he has of that time was of mommy and daddy fighting. But you recognize really what the circumstance was. But so let's start with like, again, we've exited that space. Now we're in the co-parenting space. The impact of co-parenting conflict, like what is recognizing how that impacts the kids. So where are we with that?
Okay, well, statistics show, and there have been various studies about this, that children who grow up in toxic co-parenting situations, so we're talking about with the mother and the father, or the mother and the mother, or the father and the father, whatever makeup of family it is, when you have two parents and they are unable to compromise and reach agreements, those children are significantly at higher risk of regression, bedwetting, self-harming, abuse of alcohol, drugs, cigarettes, anything they can get their hands on, anything to feel somehow in control of their life. They will start to skip class. They will start to leave school. They'll develop mental health issues, depression, PTSD. They will develop other issues because they're so stressed all of the time. Their bodies can't cope with all of the stress hormone that's constantly in their body. And the biggest one is suicide, attempted suicides. And having sat at a hospital bed, having had my son go through that, I can tell you now, I don't want any parent to ever have to go through that. It is heartbreaking.
It's devastating.
Devastating. Yeah. I was saying heartbreaking, thinking it was more than that. It was,
No,
I literally
absolutely.
could not stop crying all day. Yeah.
So clearly it's, and my instinct is that the parent who's listening to us is going, well, duh, but it's the other person who's the problem. And
Absolutely.
probably so, but there's an aspect where, like, we talk so much about, like, we can't control other people. We can't control children. We can't control our partners or our ex-partners, but we can control ourselves and we can influence the situation.
Absolutely.
To some extent, at any rate. And so I know one of the things that you talk about of what ways that we can influence the situation is with developing strategies for effective communication.
Yeah.
So what are some of those, and what impact can they have?
Absolutely. You can insist on written communication only, so that there's no, sort of screaming down the phone at each other, or one person. Quite often you find one's the aggressor and the other one's just kind of receiving all of the aggression. And I don't want to call them a victim, because they're not a victim. Generally there is a power imbalance, because when there's no power imbalance, there's no problem. So when it's not working, it's normally because there is a power imbalance. So it's acknowledging that there is a power imbalance there, and that this person, whatever they are saying or doing to try and push your buttons, that is exactly why they are saying, and what they are trying to do is push your buttons to get a reaction. And by reacting, you are giving them exactly what they want. So when you keep the communication to a written communication, it means that you have a history, you have evidence. If everything goes south, you have got the printouts, you've got the screen shots of everything that's been going on,
Sure.
so that you have evidence on your side if it all goes terribly wrong, which hopefully it won't do. But you can't rule out that happening. So first and foremost is avoid verbal discussions,
Well,
if possible. Stick to
and
written.
it strikes me too. Number one, I was actually talking with a gentleman earlier today who is divorced, has a young child. And when we got on the phone together, I was like, hey, what's going on? He's like, my ex-wife is driving me crazy. She's fine when you agree with her, but when you don't. And I think that speaks to the power imbalance that you were discussing, right?
Absolutely. When they're getting their own way, they're fine. They're quite happy. But the other,
I was going to say, the other thing that I like about what you're saying about the written communication is, like, even if they don't necessarily agree exclusively to written communication, that's something that's a stake that you can put in the ground, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Where you're like, I'm not going to respond because, like, I know personally, and I'm not divorced, I'm not in a co-parenting situation, but I know that when I get into that amped up space, that anxious space, like, for all of us, our fight or flight kicks in, and our ability to be rational or logical is shuts off.
Absolutely.
And I cannot keep my cool. And especially if I had a child in this situation that I was trying to navigate, like, that mama bear instinct that you were alluding to earlier, right, kicks in. And I know that I'm going to have a much more reasoned response if I limit myself to written communication. Plus, I can think about it and I can revise it and I can make sure that what I share or what I communicate is actually what I mean to communicate on
Absolutely.
my
And if
end,
you've
but it's
got,
not just
yeah,
their written.
yeah, and absolutely. If they refuse to send you written communication, that's fine. They'll, you don't need to answer the phone just because they're phoning you.
Mm-hmm.
You sometimes I think we get so caught up in kind of being good that, if
Mm-hmm.
somebody phones, we automatically pick up the phone. We
Mm-hmm.
don't have to. There's no law
Mm-hmm.
that says you have to. So,
Mm-hmm.
unless there's some kind of drastic emergency, in which
Right.
case they can leave a voicemail saying, look, we're at the hospital. I need you to phone me back like now.
Right. Or a text even today.
Or a text even,
Right.
like say, I'm going to phone you in 5 minutes. I need you to pick up. This is really urgent. But
Mm-hmm.
even if they won't communicate with you in writing, you can communicate back to them in writing. So you
Right.
can say, further to our conversation, you left a message on my voicemail last night stating X, Y, Z. I have it. This is my interpretation of that situation. I agree or I don't agree, or however the situation needs to unfolds. Just because
Mm-hmm.
they won't write to you doesn't stop you
Right.
confirming back to them what they have said
Right.
and what you have kind of interpreted from what they have said, so that
Mm-hmm.
you're clarifying understanding, and that also validates that you received a phone call and
Mm-hmm.
this is your response.
I like it. Any
So yeah.
So that's I mean, gosh, I love that you led off with that one. Is that the primary one that you would recommend, or do you have other insights for trying to navigate more effective communication?
I think don't respond immediately. Emotional responses are a killer. They really are, and they can basically tank anything that you've got going on instantly. It's kind of like setting a bomb off.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you make an emotional decision, you need to step back and make a rational decision based on the facts available to you at the time.
Mm-hmm.
There are apps like Our Family Wizard, for example, is court approved. So when you have somebody that wants to keep taking you back to court, use Our Family Wizard. It's court approved in the States as well as the UK.
Oh, okay. I
Um,
was going to say at least in the UK.
yeah,
So that's Our Family Wizard. Yeah.
yeah. People shorten it to OFW, but Our Family Wizard, in I think virtually all states, they accept any communication thread on there
Okay.
as evidence in any trial that you need to use it for. So
Oh,
that's a
okay.
really good one. Yeah. But
All right.
yeah, I think it's about remembering that this isn't about you. So this communication is not about you. It's about them winning.
Mm-hmm.
And when you remember that, it's not about you. It wouldn't matter
Mm-hmm.
whether it was you stood there or Joe from next door stood there or Bob from wherever stood there. It wouldn't matter. It's not about you. It's about them.
Mm-hmm.
And they are projecting.
Yeah. All right. So keep it to written communication. Don't respond immediately, even if it is written like via text or email. Give yourself some breathing space before you respond.
Yeah.
Our Family Wizard. And what can you, if you said it, I missed it. What does that Our Family Wizard app actually do? Is it a communication app?
It's a communication app. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And I like that you talked about the emotional side of things, because I know one of the points that you like to make is about managing emotions, which, oh,
Mm.
Nelly, is that sometimes a challenge, huh?
Oh, oh yes, oh yes. I think emotions and how we manage them is probably one of the things that most of us are so bad at. We're so rubbish at it, and they teach us about Victorian sewer works and sort of paintings and this, that, and the other in school, but they don't teach us about emotional intelligence and how to manage and regulate our emotional state.
Mm-hmm.
It's just assumed. It's kind of like, oh, you've reached the age of consent, off you go live your life. no,
Well,
no
and so,
instruction, no guidelines, nothing.
right. So what I'm going to do, as long as you're mentioning that, the last conversation that I just had with Kelly Haw about managing stress in your family, she gave us some really good strategies for how to help to like de-escalate things. We talked a little bit about breathing. We talked about some physical things that you can do to help, again, downregulate and like control, or not even control, but just like calm the nervous system. Because like we said, when you get into that fight or flight space, you can't think rationally.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's not just about the receipt and what to do when the emotion's coming at you and how you translate it. It's also about if you need to talk to somebody that you are pretty much at war with, you need to, sorry, I'm just going to have to take a break.
No, that's
fine. So it's not, I'm just about to cough and have a coffee fit.
I know how that goes.
Right, I'm back. Sorry about that. Right, it's
no problem
about sort of building yourself up to have that conversation that you don't want to have. So you've got a conversation that you need to have with the other half, with the ex, and you know it's going to go south. You know they're not going to like it, but you have to have that conversation. Is, you know, sort of you have to tell them something's happened, or you know you have to pass on some information and psyching yourself up to actually gain the courage to do that. And one of the easiest tricks to do that is something that Mel Robbins teaches, who is an amazing woman that is everywhere online. She's got an amazing podcast, and she does 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. And basically, you know, you need to do something. You count backwards from 5 down to 1, and then on the 0, just do it. Because what you're doing is you're disrupting your brain's patterns so that the logical part of your brain kicks in, and the protective part of your brain, you know, the bit that wants to keep you alive as a human being, doesn't have time to kick in and go, no, don't do that. That's not safe. You know, there might be bears and dinosaurs running around everywhere that are going to eat you. Don't do that. So you don't want to give that bit of your brain a chance to do any of it. You just want to be able to do it. And counting backwards from 5 down to 0 works every time.
I love it. You also talk about setting boundaries. And I think the written communication is an example of one manner of communication, but it's also a boundary for yourself and for the ex-partner. And I think it's really a very clear boundary of like, it's either written, I can either read it off of some kind of device or piece of paper or napkin, or it's not, right? Like that's a very clearly defined, doesn't seem like there's any possible perforations in that boundary.
No, absolutely.
What other kinds of boundaries can be helpful for the parent that we're speaking to in this situation?
I think there are certain other boundaries that you can have, such as the other parent is not permitted within your home, so that your home is a safe place. If the other person is prone to be aggressive or overbearing or shouty or angry or any of those negative emotions, if you want your child and yourself to have a calm, happy home, then there is an invisible block on that door. They do not get to enter. So handover is on the porch, on the steps, at the end of the path. You know, if dad has to, or mum has to pull up at the end of the pathway or the end of the driveway and open the back door, the other parent, unless they literally have to be carried, the other parent can literally wave the child off at the door and the child goes to the other parent. And a lot of people don't realize that you can do that. It's not neglect, it's not abuse. It's just removing that opportunity of those two people getting close enough to each other that an argument starts.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, safe place, you know, in front of a police station, at a shopping mall, anywhere where there's CCTV or some kind of monitoring so that nothing can kick off in that space, that's always the safest bet when there is conflict involved, because you want to be safe. Safety is all important.
Well, and that also actually even speaks to, so many homes now have like a Ring doorbell, and you can put the cameras up that if you wanted to, or felt like, especially like in your circumstance, my goodness, with a chainsaw, a something or other, and a German Shepherd. I don't remember what the middle one was, but I remember it was horrifying. Like, and you didn't have video cameras on your home or in the back garden in those days, right? But today it's
No,
darn easy to have that, and to have, if maybe you're not worried about burglars coming into your home, but if you're concerned about safety with an ex-partner involved, that seems like a pretty easy way to go about it, because that also speaks to the last point that you wanted to make about legal ramifications, that so much of what you've discussed so far, like from the written communication, is like, you've got proof, you've got things written out, you've got screenshots. Well, video is evidence that's admissible in court, right? And if you have the Ring camera or something of that variety, or you're at some place where there is, like a police station or a firehouse where there's cameras and things can be documented, it's way easier to prove things with that, isn't it?
absolutely, absolutely, and it's all about evidence. So if you are saying, well, the other person is not a good parent, they don't look after the children, they don't do this, they don't do that, they don't do the other, or they're abusive or whatever, the courts will need to ask for evidence. It's part and parcel. They can't do an awful lot without any kind of evidence or testimonial. And if you have somebody that's extremely high conflict, they are going to be looking to provoke you into that state where you are being seen as the aggressor.
Right.
And that is part and parcel of the game that they're trying to play, to establish themselves as the victim. So they're playing a very clever game.
Well, and I also imagine that could be part of the game that they play to, in a backhanded way, as the aggressor. If we're talking about parenting time, we're talking about, maintenance, as we call it, or alimony is, an older term for it. But also, like, I know, at least here in Colorado in the US, a friend of mine is a criminal defense attorney. She's actually been a guest on a former podcast of ours, that if you're in a domestic violence situation, if a call is made for domestic violence, at least in our jurisdiction, someone has to leave in handcuffs.
Right.
And if you have a manipulative partner, they're going to do everything they can to make it look like you're the bad guy, so you're the one who gets arrested. And goodness, I'm grateful that I have not had to navigate this. Thank you for navigating it, coming out the other side, and now going back and finding meaning in it, and helping other people. I know, when I first asked you how willing, how you felt, not willing, but how comfortable you felt about sharing your own story, you said, I'm perfectly fine doing it, because so many other people are still there and think they're alone, and think that there isn't help. And the fact is that there is help. And there, if when they hit that rock bottom and they get to that point and they need to figure out what those next steps are, you can be a part of that, again, post divorce, when they're navigating it. But frankly, it seems to me that much of the recommendation you've offered so far is pretty valuable if you're still in that, like, disentanglement stage, shall we call it.
Yeah, and I think probably the first and biggest mistake that we all make, and I am just as guilty of this as everybody else, is you start thinking about divorce, and the immediate thought is go to a lawyer, because that's what everybody tells you to do. Go to a lawyer, so go and get the advice from a lawyer. Whereas when you go to the lawyer and you're only appointing a lawyer to deal with it all, that lawyer is going to be a very expensive and not very good therapist when you're going to him or her and you're asking all sorts of questions that are not legally related, that you're spending crying in their office, using up their tissues, that you are fighting over Great Aunt Ethel's tea set and who's going to get custody of the dog, and stupid little things that are decisions are being made based on emotion,
Mm-hmm.
which is not viable financially,
Mm-hmm.
or legally, or emotionally, or any other which way. You need a team. If you're getting divorced, you need a team. You need somebody to help you with the emotional overwhelm. You need somebody to help you with the legal part, and you need somebody to help you with the financial part. So you build your team. There's a company in the States called Amicable Divorce Network. I'm part of the UK side of that, but it's based in Georgia, I think. But they've got representatives from those different categories all over the States. So look them up, talk to them,
Can
find
you
your
say it
own
one more
team.
time?
Amicable Divorce Network.
Okay.
But it's about picking your team. You
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't go in to have a kidney stone removed and just have a surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't. You'd have
Uh-huh.
nurses, you'd have
Yeah,
anaesthetists, you'd have scrub nurses, you'd have pre-op people, you'd have post-op people, you'd even have the people wheeling in your trolleys and counting out the swabs that are being done. So why would you only go to one person when you're probably about to go through one of the biggest events of your life?
for sure.
So yeah, I'm a
Wow, that
firm believer. Yeah.
is sage advice. Jenni, thank you so much. I know folks who are listening to this have gotten some valuable insights. I'm sure they've had some aha moments. And for the folks who are listening, I'm just going to put a shameless reminder in that Jenni has offered her time today as part of Empowerthon, which is the foundation, the fundraiser for the Parent Tween Foundation. So if you've gotten good information, would you follow the link in the description? And I mean, even if it's a case where like $5 is all you can swing, every dollar helps families get the help that they need. So Jenni, thank you. I
You're welcome.
appreciate you. I appreciate your time, and I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to know you since we first met. And I'm grateful that you're doing work like this because I know there are a lot of people who are going to benefit from it. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Wonderful. Well, lovely to spend time with you, Clarissa.
And I
And
should also
don't
say,
forget, guys, yeah, foundation, get some money in.
that's it, right? I should also say thank you for joining us at what, 10 o'clock in the evening, Britain time?
Yeah, it's now 10 to 11
10
in
to
the
11
evening.
in set. Well, hey, have a good sleep. And thanks so much. I appreciate you being with us.
No, thank you. Thank you. Lovely to
All
see
right.
you.
Bye, everybody.